this might be one of the most talked about lenses on YouTube. So I questioned for a while whether I should even make this video to make my own video about this, but I figured why not. And a while back I asked you guys which lens review you wanted me to start with out of a few manual focus lens choices, and this was one of the top responses that I got. So here's my take on the classic Pentax Super Takumar 50mm f1.4. So like I said in that video intro, there are a lot of videos about this lens on YouTube already. I don't really have a lot of unique historical facts or specification details that you haven't heard, but I can just give you my take on it, my experience using it, and why you might consider looking for one and adding it to your kit. Before I get started though, I should tell you that one specific video I would suggest watching before or after mine is Mark Holtz's video on this that he made in March. And if you haven't checked out Mark Holtz's channel, you definitely should check that out. He's got a great channel that talks a lot about photography and filmmaking, and he spends a lot of time using old school manual focus lenses and makes great videos on these. And his video on this is more thorough in certain aspects than mine will be. So this will be more of a supplement to what he talked about and what some other people have talked about. So I'll put the link to Mark's channel in the description. He has a lot more viewers than I do, but if I can send him a couple, that's cool. Okay, so the first version of this lens, there was multiple versions with two essential differentiations. The first version had 8 elements, and the later versions had 7. And this is one of the later versions that has 7 elements. Mark does a great comparison between the 7 and 8, so check that out because he does have both and he compares them. I'm just going to talk about the 7 element version because that's what I have. So let's start off with price. I don't remember what I paid for mine. I got mine with a Pentax Spotmatic F, I think. That was broken, but the lens was in great shape and in great condition. So I kept the lens, sold off the camera. Although I do want to pick up another Spotmatic, I think, but that's another story. The price that I saw today researching was between $100 to $200 for a lens like this in this condition. You can find some cheaper, but they're a little scuffed up. But if you do find one cheaper, that's great. But I would say expect to pay between $100 to $200 for this lens. But oftentimes it comes with a body. So if you get a Spotmatic or something like that and you shoot film, then that's a bonus. If you don't shoot film, that's a collector's item or you can sell it. But the lens is definitely worth that money alone, I think. As you'll see with some of my sample images and as you do more research, what you get with this lens does match that $100 to $200 price tag. The image samples will speak for themselves, but let's jump right into image quality. It's decently sharp wide open. It gets very sharp when you stop down. Good detail and contrast. I talk about these in generalities because I rarely do serious lens comparisons in terms of putting 2 lenses in one place and shooting the same subject. I am going to start that, but for now I don't have that. All I know is when I see the images I've captured with this, I'm always impressed, and I kind of have to like remind myself, okay, well, why does this image look slightly different? And one of the reasons in this case is because this lens does render a really sharp, detailed image, especially when you're stopped down a little bit. A lot of times the benefits of using vintage lenses are getting the cool and interesting characteristics that the vintage glass provides, getting random lens flares or getting some discoloration or getting some fringing or chromatic aberration. Sometimes those flaws, quote unquote flaws, are welcome when you're trying to add character, when you're trying to add some interest or drama to your image. Using vintage glass is one way to do that without having to add any extra filter or whatnot. You can capture it that way. And that's one of the exciting things about this world of vintage lenses. You can get these great, cool lenses that are really affordable. This has some of that, especially since this is the 7 element, which because of the way it was built, it does sometimes have some discoloration over time, but that can be worked out. But regardless, besides that, there's not a lot of that classic vintage flaws. It has fantastic sharpness, like I already said. It has minimal lens flare. It has minimal fringing and chromatic aberration. All that combined make it a really, really well-rounded lens. So if you're buying this for some crazy lens flare, or for some really extreme wild bokeh or cool built-in vignetting or whatnot, you're really not going to get any of that craziness with this lens. You get this lens, I think, for sharpness and detail, and for that 1.4 aperture, of course. One of the other reasons to consider this lens, besides image quality and those benefits that I described, is the build quality. I mean, I think we all know that the old school lenses are built extremely well. They don't make them like they used to, right? But this one might be one of the best lenses I've ever owned, new or old. I always talk about when things are made of metal and how I appreciate that. But this literally, I think, is all metal besides the glass and the rubber gaskets inside. So from everything from this little aperture switch here to both the aperture and focus ring, everything is really well made, and the build quality translates to the ease of use and the high quality feel of the focus and aperture ring when you're turning them. I mean, they're super smooth. Obviously the aperture does have clicks, which is appreciated, but those clicks are snappy and not too difficult to turn, but yet noticeably clicky, I guess you could say. So right now Fujifilm cameras are my main digital system for video and digital photography. So this mounted on an X series camera is around a 75mm. So that's fantastic for portraits. Still very usable for street photography. You just have to adjust your framing and your approach as opposed to when you're using a 35mm or something like that. The aperture range obviously starts at f1.4 and goes to f16. This model has half stops on the aperture between f2 and f11, but doesn't have the half stops at the extreme ends. It doesn't have the half stops between f1.4 and f2, and it doesn't have the half stops between f11 and f16. The half stops aren't a huge deal for me because I've used a lot of vintage lenses and I expect that not all of them had the half stops. Being really nitpicky about this lens, I do wish it went to f22. Like I always say, shooting in the bright sunlight during summer, I need all the help I can get to stop down and give me some flexibility. But not having f22 has not given me any pause when deciding whether to pick up this lens to use it or not. It's slightly soft at f1.4, but I think that's to be expected, really. But it's really just slightly soft. It's totally usable, and also it just also depends on the distance of your subject. But as soon as you start stopping down, it gets extremely sharp and the image improves dramatically all the way around. But I like the look of these images at f1.4. I usually don't buy all these lenses to chase that super wide open aperture. And especially if the lens doesn't look that great at 1.2, 1.4, whatever the widest aperture is, then sometimes I'll just stop down immediately and use it at the second widest aperture. But this one I won't hesitate at all using it at 1.4 because I know it's going to deliver. Overall, I just really love shooting with this lens. Just like with anything else, it's everything that combines that goes into a great shooting experience. The build quality is the start. It's fairly compact, and when you add the adapter on it, it doesn't become this massive lens on your small X-T1, X-T2 camera. So that's nice. The focus ring is super smooth, and the distance scale and aperture ring labels are really nice and easy to read. And the aperture ring and focus ring have these built-in ridges that are obviously metal because the ring is metal. Other lenses will have like a rubber casing type thing for the grip. And this one doesn't, the grip is built in, so that's super nice. You know that's going to be there for a while. You're not going to, you know that grip's not going anywhere, which is really, really nice. A lot of times you have to make compromises on lens choices, especially when you get to lower budget lenses. Sometimes you'll make sacrifices on usability and ergonomics to get a certain image quality, or you'll sacrifice image quality for maybe the way it's built or something like that. These compromises are just something we've come to expect, especially with vintage lenses or cheap lenses, affordable lenses. This doesn't really have many compromises. Just from my shooting experience, I say if you compare it to like the Canon 50mm 1.4 FD lens, that might have a better color rendition than this one does. But other than that, they are neck and neck, and this one might edge that one out with for sharpness. But I think I'm going to do a comparison video on that just to make sure. But like I said, the compromises on this are almost none, really. It's just a fantastic lens. Do I recommend this lens? Obviously, no surprise, yes, easily. Just like many other people have. I don't know if I've seen one of those videos that people really disliked it. It's just a fantastic lens, and if you find one, I highly recommend you pick it up. Whether you want to get into film photography, this would be a great lens to have as your main lens. This, and you add the Spotmatic or the SP500 or something like that. That'd be a great combo. And like I said before, I think I'm going to pick up another Spotmatic so I can use this lens with a film camera like that again. But for now, I'm going to keep adapting it to my Fuji cameras. Oh, and that reminds me of another thing. Why this also works well with the Fuji system and why I really love adapting it and using it is because the layout of the aperture and whatnot is in the same direction as my Fuji lenses are. So you build that muscle memory of knowing which direction to turn the aperture ring to open it wide open or to turn it to close it down. Having it in the same direction may seem like a small thing, and I guess it is, but those things add up to a really cool experience when you're shooting. And anything that saves you time and helps you keep moving without thinking is awesome. So that's a huge benefit. But whether you shoot Fujifilm or any other digital camera, this adapts well, and I highly suggest you give it a shot. So in the description below, I have a link to KEH Use Photo Pro, which is an affiliate link, and I'll try to have an eBay affiliate link so you can search for a copy of this lens yourself. But just keep an eye out on your local Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp or whatever app that you have in your area to buy used gear with. And check out Mark Holtz's channel and his video on these lenses. That's really, really great. He has a great series of vintage lens videos. So thank you as always for watching. I appreciate every one of my subscribers and every one of the viewers and all the feedback I get. It's really, really awesome. And I don't know where I'll be at subscriber-wise when I post this video, but I know I'm around 900 now, so let's see how fast I can reach that 1,000 mark. So thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.